recent study out of the University of California, Berkeley has found small traces of arsenic, lead, and other toxic metals in numerous brands of tampons. Researchers studied 30 tampons from 14 different brands sold in the US, UK, and Greece, but say it's too early to know whether those metals pose any health risks to users. Joining us now to discuss this is our CBC Health columnist, Dr. Melissa Lem. Doctor, looking at the study, how much of these metals was found and what sort of potential side effects may they have on people?
Dan, there were detectable levels of all 16 kinds of metal they analyzed, and two of the most concerning ones are lead and arsenic. And the average tampon contained about 25% of the amount of lead in a cigarette. But before I mention possible side effects, I want to say that dose really matters here. The actual amount you might be exposed to through tampon use is very low. There's, for example, the same concentration of lead in dried apples. But that said, if you're also getting exposed to lead from other sources like old paint or drinking water, lead in particular can bioaccumulate. It gets stored in your bones where it replaces calcium and can stay in your body for decades and has been linked to issues with almost every organ system, especially neurological function, even at very low levels.
And why is it that we find these metals in something like a tampon?
Well, it's very unlikely that these toxic metals were deliberately added to them. They're more likely due to contamination from the environment. So the cotton plants or trees that grew the cotton and rayon in the tampons probably absorbed these metals from contaminated soil, or water used during the manufacturing process could also have contained them. And I think this underlines the idea that what we release into the environment, whether it's pesticides or heavy metals from industrial activities or the lead we used to burn in our gasoline until the 1990s, it makes its way back to us in the products we consume, whether it's our food or, in this case, our hygiene products. Our health is very closely linked to the health of our environments.
Now, we've seen this issue covered quite a bit in the last week or so. What would you say to patients who may be concerned about the fact that these metals are in something like a tampon?
Well, Dan, 50 to 80% of people who menstruate in North America use tampons. So I can definitely see why this study got so much interest and coverage. But something the researchers made very clear, and I think you mentioned, is that they don't know how much of these metals actually get absorbed into the body during use. And as I mentioned before, these are very trace amounts that in isolation are unlikely to cause significant health issues. But if you are concerned about harmful metal or chemical exposure through tampons, I'd encourage people to consider using reusable, non-toxic products like menstrual cups. We have research done right here in Canada that showed that overall satisfaction was higher than with tampons. And not only do menstrual cups produce far less waste, but they're also a lot cheaper.
And lastly, Dr. Lem, we appreciate your time. This issue has brought about a fair amount of conversation about how people experience menstruation. Do you think this is a wider shift in perhaps opening up about how we talk about menstruation and associated topics?
Well, I think conversations like this are incredibly important. Not only are periods something that half of the world's population will experience at some point, but women's health research is significantly underfunded compared to men's health. And as long as we continue to pair these conversations about the problems with information about solutions, being more open about how we experience menstruation can, I think, only lead to good things.
Dr. Lem, we always appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.